Hi, I'm Chike Coleman, and this is Real Reviews, the show where I talk about movies, TV, and sometimes other stuff. Chuck will be back with another episode of Real Reviews, the Cinematic Underground, in the next month or so, but for now, I'm going to be your host again. And this week, I wanted to talk about a couple of films that I saw. The first of which is the latest film by James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, for those of you who've not seen Guardians of the Galaxy, let me give you a quick catch-up. There's this guy named Peter Quill, whose mother is dying of cancer when he's a kid, and he gets abducted by aliens, and those aliens literally take him on a journey to basically steal stuff because they're space pirates. After being captured by the law, Star-Lord, aka Peter Quill, befriends these Guardians of the Galaxy. Drax, a guy who can't really take... he can take jokes seriously. Actually, that's his stick, is every joke that you tell him, he takes as dead serious comments. You've got Rocket the raccoon who loves guns. You've got Groot, the giant tree alien who is only allowed to say things in 3 words, and those 3 words are "I'm Groot," and that's a fascinating combination. You've also got Gamora, who is a green shooting alien. She's green and she shoots guns and plays with knives. And she and Star-Lord are all on a mission to find this thing that turns out to be an Infinity Stone to stop this other creature from having it. There's also a character named Yondu, played by Michael Rooker, who is the adopted father of Peter Quill. And Peter Quill is basically going throughout this whole movie trying to successfully work with all these different people of all these different alien races. And there's a lot of humor and fun in the film. And that continues with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, as I said, continually again directed by James Gunn. And there's a lot of retro music used in this film with the same Guardians. This time, the story's a bit different, though. The Guardians are just coming off saving the world again from an alien disaster, and they get saved by this character known as Ego. See, Rocket takes some of these energy weapons from these people that the Guardians of the Galaxy are saving, and though that stealing that happens basically causes those aliens to come after the Guardians of the Galaxy, and the Guardians of the Galaxy are saved by Ego, the living planet. Ego, the living planet, reveals, I'm your father, Peter, played by Kurt Russell, in an extraordinary performance. And Kurt Russell's character of Ego is all about explaining Peter Quill's parentage, and not only why Ego, the living planet, is his father, but what really happened to Peter Quill's mother. And it's a very interesting story of Peter Quill basically learning his origins, which is something that people have been clamoring for since the original Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a really beautiful story about the relationship of the Guardians to each other and what it really means not to just be friends, but in this case to take it one step further and be family. In the last Guardians of the Galaxy film, the original, spoiler alert, Groot, the living tree, sacrifices itself to save the Guardians, and at the start of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a very, very, very tiny tree, and he's very adorable, and he basically pays attention to nothing around him, which leads to hilarity on many fronts, because you're just like, oh, poor Groot, you're not understanding the subtleties of what's going on with your team, or really how to best help the team. And the beginning of the film, the opening shots, and the finale are the centerpieces of hilarity with Groot. Gamora is still fighting her sister, because the sister is still bitter about being basically turned into a mechanical version of herself due to the fact that Thanos, Gamora's father, basically pitted the two sisters against each other, and every time the other sister lost. She was ripped of a part of her body and it was replaced with something mechanical. The two sisters are fighting throughout the film, and that's what makes it really interesting is their relationship has a bit of an evolution. The reason Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is so fun is because the director and writer James Gunn makes it fun. These characters are likable. They're friendly. They're also having animosity toward each other at certain points. But it's kind of what a family does, right? They fight, they argue, they work really hard to be their best selves, even when, it seemed like that's not possible. I really love the idea that, Peter Quill trusts his family, but also is more concerned with his own origins. As I said, Kurt Russell does a fantastic job in this film being Peter Quill's parent. And it leaves Peter with a few more questions than answers that are eventually solved by Drax and other members of the team. Drax, I might add, is still not really understanding sarcasm, and that's to the benefit of the audience and everyone else who's viewing the film, because those moments are hilarious as well. Overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a more than solid follow-up to Guardians of the Galaxy, and I can't wait to see what happens in Volume 3. Also, the soundtrack for Volume 2 may be different than Volume 1, but that doesn't mean it's not awesome. You should also check that out on CD or vinyl. So the next film I wanted to talk about was Hysteria, directed by Tanya Wexler, and it showed at Ebertfest 2017. This stars Hugh Dancy and Maggie Gyllenhaal. The film is basically based around a facet of the 1800s in which women who are not satisfied in their marriages or romantic relationships see a doctor to cure this thing called hysteria, which ends up basically being the start of masturbation through the use of doctors, which is quite an intriguing thing. So women seek hysteria when they're not being satisfied by their husbands or boyfriends, and doctors, forgive the crude term, use their fingers to allow women to feel pleasure in their nether regions. And because of that, Hugh Dancy's doctor, who always wanted to do something important or good in his life with his medical degree, takes on curing women of their hysteria. There's just one problem, though. His fingers start to fail him, and his wrist starts to hurt after curing women of hysteria so frequently. And as a result of this, he starts to not be able to do the work that he has been hired to do. Later on, it's discovered that the doctor's daughter, the oldest daughter, there's a younger one played by Felicity Jones, the older one is played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, is kind of a woman who is a free thinker and an independent woman who helps women out at the women's shelter. And she's criticized for that work because it's believed that women of lower station don't really deserve the help. The doctor, played by Hugh Dancy, actually thinks that, the woman is doing noble work, but, she shouldn't be trying to challenge the status quo. This results in the idea that you have Hugh Dancy's character still helping these women, but not really being able to do the actual treatment justice. Thus, another character played by Rupert Everett is inventing a thing called the feather duster. It's electronic, and it vibrates, and in some cases can rotate. So they decide to put something soft on it, and the feather duster becomes the very first vibrator that succeeds in helping women with their hysteria. The woman played by Maggie Gyllenhaal's character has a sister as well, played by Felicity Jones, who is a very smart mathematician, but is also, because of her father, not being allowed to be a free thinker. The reason Maggie Gyllenhaal is allowed to be a free thinker in this film is because she is far and away separated from her family, which gives her more the ability to do the things that she needs to do to help women be successful and supported in their environment in the 1800s. Overall, this is a really good film about women's independence and about the archaic ways men treated women at that time, as well as how they took their independence and their power, mainly through the use of working in social work and also in some cases fighting the notion of what the definition of hysteria is. It's really, women that are unsatisfied by being forced down into being less than equal, and how brilliant a thing it was eventually that women were allowed that equality, even though there is still pay gap wages and sexual harassment that exist in our society. It is nice to see from a female filmmaker her interpretation of how far women have come. And I really enjoyed that movie, and I would really highly recommend it. The last film I wanted to talk about today is Being There, directed by Hal Ashby and starring Peter Sellers. In our political climate currently, we have Donald Trump as our president, who basically gets elected on the idea that people thought, because of his business acumen, that he had good ideas. And because he says yes and no to certain things, people were like, oh yes, I agree with his policies. Now, if you put that in movie form, you get the plot of Being There. You have a man named Chance, who is a gardener at an estate. The owner passes away, and because Chance has never been really out and involved in the real world, he goes out into the real world not knowing anything about it in the late 1980s, and basically, for lack of a better term, becomes a yes man. And being a yes man in that 1980s climate, because you're basically being asked a question like, what do you think about the state of the political climate with our president? And he'll say something like, well, if you don't tend the garden and you don't water the garden, then the garden will never be as full as it needs to be. And people will take that and interpret that as, yes, I really do think the president needs to improve on his foreign policies with these countries. And I really do think you have a point there about the way the president is attacking the issue of the environment. And of course, because they inferred a more long-winded answer than Chance the gardener gave, because of that, he is given all of these special privileges and access to important people in political power, and is even viewed in some circles as a political power himself because of his very vague and metaphorical answers to the political climate and the state of the United States at that time. And it's really a revolutionary performance of subtlety from Peter Sellers. There's also just amazing performances by Shirley MacLaine as well. Just everything about this film just works because it perfectly underlines our current political climate, whether you be Republican or Democrat. For Democrats, they're thinking, well, this Republican that we've basically elected president doesn't know what he's doing. And, it's proven by the statements he makes. But clearly from the Republican end of things, they're thinking Democrats don't know what they're doing because they're not, working across the aisle with the Republicans to get things done. So it's a double-edged sword no matter which way you look at it. And to have someone in the White House that is kind of just going along and agreeing with things, or giving a definitive no answer on something else, really kind of gives the film its shape. And Hal Ashby is also making a political parody of the current political system at that time, but also making fun of the fact that if you're a yes man, if you find ways to say yes and no to things in a metaphorical enough nature, you can be given power in this country. And it does a lot to show what our political system is organized by and arranged in such a way, but also Peter Sellers is just a fantastic comedic actor. He can do so much with so little, and I had the great fortune of watching Being There with the editor-in-chief of RogerEbert.com, Matt Zoller Seitz, who I think is a fantastic writer whose work you should check out. And he and I were just laughing hysterically at everything that was happening to Chance the Gardener because of the absurdity of it all. So I really think that if you can find it on Netflix, or you can rent it on DVD, or find it on iTunes, you need to see Being There. It's a great film that I love very much, that talks about our political climate as it stands today and what it could be in the future. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was the last episode of The Flash, which, as of the airing of this program, aired last night. And it's called The Finish Line. And basically all season long we were building up to the idea that Iris West of The Flash may die as a result of being captured by Savitar. That whole climax is upended in the finale of The Flash because it turns out that basically we have Iris West not being the one who gets killed in the finale. Instead, H.R., the third Harrison Wells, dies as a result of trying to protect Iris West. And then we have the idea of, well, how is Barry going to stop Savitar? Which it was revealed to us in earlier episodes that Savitar is actually Barry Allen from a future point in time. So the real catch of that episode is, how are you going to stop the guy who is you, who has all of your memories? And the answer to that question is, you don't. You try and reason with him. You try and be the best version of yourself, because that's the only way to beat someone who is that evil, who is basically you. So Barry tries that strategy and it fails. Eventually what ends up having to happen is that Cisco gets captured by Savitar, uses the Speed Force bazooka, which was invented in episodes earlier, to quote-unquote splice Savitar throughout all of time, which ends up failing miserably. And what they end up doing is essentially causing him to open a keyhole into the Speed Force to free the person who has currently been in the Speed Force, which is Jay Garrick, a.k.a. The Flash from Earth 19, I believe it is. And together, those three speedsters, the Flash from Earth 19, and Kid Flash, all work together to stop Savitar. But doing so comes at a cost, which is that the Speed Force kind of strikes lightning throughout all of Central City because the Speed Force is unstable, leading for someone to have to go into the Speed Force. I will not tell you who, but it leads up to one of the greatest cliffhangers the series has ever had, and it's going to be a kick in the teeth for next season. Overall, I really liked this season of The Flash. There are about 3 or 4 episodes that didn't work for me, but overall, that show is firing on all cylinders. And if you have not seen The Flash, you need to catch up to it because it is a fantastic series. The last thing that I wanted to talk about today is the Canadian Broadcasting Company's new series, Anne, which is an adaptation of Anne of Green Gables. This is not like the Kevin Sullivan version of Anne of Green Gables that you all are used to, starring Megan Follows. This is a completely new adaptation of Anne of Green Gables, and I can't remember the names for you right now of who all of the actors are. But it is on Netflix, and it is a much darker adaptation of Anne of Green Gables. And now, if you didn't know, Anne of Green Gables is about a little orphan girl who is sent to Prince Edward Island to live with the Cuthberts, Marilla, and I forget what her brother's name is at the moment, um, and her brother. They are working together, and they're supposed to become a family. But of course, Anne isn't really used to actually having a family, so at every turn she's kind of freaking out, and she's basically using her imagination because she had such trouble in foster homes. Because, girls were treated as servants and housewives rather than individuals who deserve free thought, which kind of ties in interestingly with the film that we just talked about, directed by Miss Wexler. Anne of Green Gables is a much darker tale in this new television show than has been previously adapted. The reason it works is because it takes a darker, more romanticized cinematic look at the tale of Anne of Green Gables. You see Anne learning lessons and, essentially learning about how the world functions as a whole, and it's really stunning work. The series is written by Moira Walley-Beckett, who was a writer on Breaking Bad, and for better or worse, this TV series is more about the women who shape the world than the men who are, being inventors or engineers or what have you. And Anne is essentially the woman that breaks that mold, that breaks into that world of being a free thinker and a woman with political thoughts and ideas and ideals for what she wants for her life. All of these things play beautifully in the first season of Anne, which by Netflix has now been renamed Anne with an E, because that's something that the character says in the pilot. It is a fantastic show with beautiful production values and an excellent cast filled with excellent actors. You should check it out at your earliest convenience. Anne with an E. It's on Netflix. Now, next week, schedule depending, I will be back with another review. I don't think it will be a Baywatch, so you can all thank your lucky stars. It may, however, be about Pirates of the Caribbean. I believe it's Dead Men Tell No Tales, or that may be the fourth one. I'm sorry if I got the chronology of that incorrect. Either way, we'll be back with another review next week, and I will see you all later. Thank you. Bye.